Welcome, Emily. Thank you for joining me for this YouTube series on self-publishing. I have your official bio below the video, but could you tell us a bit about yourself in your own words?
Yeah, so my name's Emily Cruz. I currently live in the Pacific Northwest in Washington State. I am a nonprofit professional by day and a freelance author by night, it seems. So I work for a nonprofit that supports foster children, and I also love writing, and most recently have enjoyed writing and self-publishing books. So that's a little bit about me.
Amazing. So would you mind sharing, title of your book, what year you published, all of that good stuff?
Yeah, last year I self-published my first book called This Won't Define Me: Exchanging a Fearful Life for a Fruitful One. And that's available on Amazon. And it's a nonfiction book. It's sort of a collection of stories about my personal journey with fear and things that I've learned and things that God has shown me through those experiences. So that's my first self-published book. And then I have another one coming out this August. This one is a very different from my first one. It's a fiction, sort of rom-com, fun friends story about four best friends that go on a girls' trip to Paris. So two very different books, but yeah, it's been fun to sort of explore different genres and stories and find what I like to write best. So
Amazing. I love that. So I know that self-publishing gives you the ability to, publish some nonfiction and some fiction and get to have that, creative freedom there, which I love. But I'm curious for you, what led you to decide to self-publish that first book?
yeah, so writing a book has been something that I think has lived somewhere in my heart for many years, starting at a young age, and sort of as I got older and started writing more in a professional manner, I sort of lost sight of what it looks like to write for fun or as a hobby. And it was the beginning of 2022 that I felt really called to get back into writing as a hobby, writing for fun. And as that sort of evolved, this dream that had kind of like been dormant in me, this dream of writing a book, was brought to the surface. And the timing was really, call it serendipitous or fate, whatever you want to call it. The timing was just perfect. Of as this all was happening, I got connected with an author. Her name is Amanda Carpenter, who I've been following for a long time and just really admired her work. And anyways, I found out about this program that she offers called Your Stories Matter program. And basically, she partners with you and helps you publish your book in 12 weeks. And so I ended up working with her on this book, and she was like my writing coach, editor, publisher, all of the things. And when you're in this program, you have sort of two routes: self-publishing or traditional publishing. And I just was so, I think, surprised to see how accessible self-publishing is. I had no outside knowledge of it before this experience, and I thought, wow, this is not easy, because there's a lot of work that goes into it, but it's just so much more accessible than I thought. And I had this sort of one track idea of publishing, and it was traditional publishing, and it took years, and it was this big scary thing, this idea that I have had of publishing. And so when I learned more about self-publishing, I was like, this feels right for me. I would love to just get this story into the hands of other people. I'm not trying to sell a million copies. So I think for what I wanted to accomplish with this book, self-publishing just felt so accessible and right for me personally.
That's great. I love to hear that. So what parts of this self-publishing process, either, the first book or this one you're working on now, what parts have you enjoyed?
Yeah. I love anything creative. So I mean, obviously writing the books was so much fun and also extremely difficult, but I think that I've found a lot of joy in like the cover design or like little creative elements here and there. That's been really fun. And then getting to see the book go from like a Google Doc to this like thing that you're holding in your hand and pages that you get to turn. I think that's been one of my favorite parts of the whole experience.
That's awesome. So, having self-published myself and worked with many people and interviewed several people already, I know that we all face challenges in the self-publishing process. I'm curious, what challenges you have faced and how did you overcome those?
Yeah. I will say one of my biggest struggles has been marketing my book and like showing up on social media in that space, especially going from like Instagram being pictures of my family and my dog to I wrote a book, buy it, that it was a huge jump. And there was a lot of imposter syndrome throughout writing the book and then also marketing it. And just this idea of like, who am I to be doing this? So I had a lot of difficulty showing up in that way and sharing my work, especially my first book being it was a nonfiction, just all about my life and very vulnerable parts of my life. So that was a struggle of just, I think at the beginning, it got easier as I went through the process and as the book was out. But at the beginning, it was just like, oh my gosh, how can I hand my words, my vulnerable words over to other people? And also, how do I tell people to buy my book? I think when I was marketing it, I was like, I'll just give everybody a copy for free. So that's been a struggle. And then logistically speaking, the formatting was a little bit of a learning curve. There are a lot of great resources online, but I decided to just go it myself. And definitely was a learning curve. There were I used KDP on Amazon, and there were many re-uploads of the manuscript or the cover format, making sure it was, the exact dimensions. So that was a little bit of a learning curve for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I love that you touched on some of those external challenges and obstacles and also those internal ones. Because I think, technology and marketing, those are both very common obstacles that people are thinking about when they go into self-publishing. And sometimes we forget about those internal struggles of that imposter syndrome and how do you put your vulnerable words out there and how do you tell people to buy this thing that you made? So can relate to all of those. Yeah, awesome. So you've touched on it a little bit, but do you mind just diving in more about what parts of this whole process you did yourself and what parts you hired out or had other people handle for you?
Yeah. So for my first book, I worked with Manda at the beginning, and that was she was the catalyst to me writing the book, truly. So she helped with outlining, edits. She helped me throughout writing it. She helped a ton. And then I did the book cover. My sister-in-law actually, she's an incredible illustrator. So she drew a really beautiful floral display for the book cover. And so that was fun. I did all the formatting of the manuscript. And then for this new book coming out, I hired somebody for the cover design, editing. I'm like trying to outsource some more things for this one as I'm learning, as I learned through the first process, like what was extra difficult this first time that I could really outsource some help for the second time. So it's been fun to see the differences there, from doing it myself to outsourcing.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe just your internal thoughts or how you're feeling, like what is it like on this second project versus that first one? Like how do you feel differently this time around?
Yeah, there's sort of this component of like, I can't believe this is happening again. It was hard to believe the first time that I did it. And, I really have to credit the writing coach that I worked with the first time, because not only was the benefit of that going through that process and writing my first book, but I really felt like it gave me the confidence and the tools to say, okay, I want to do this again and I want to keep doing it, which is not ever something I would have been able to anticipate 1 year ago or a year and a half ago. So I think this time around, I feel much more confident. I wouldn't say that I'm like fully 110% know what I'm doing, but I feel much more confident in the process. I feel much more familiar with like the technology. Fingers crossed formatting is easier this time. But yeah, I just feel a little bit more familiar and confident, and I think that I'm sure that we'll always struggle with imposter syndrome in anything that we're doing, just as human beings. But I think I have a better handle on like letting imposter syndrome come and letting it roll off my back a little bit easier than it did the first time. And I think a little bit less pressure to perform rather than just like find joy in writing stories and knowing that there's a reader out there, even if it's just one. There's like a reader out there for your book and your story. So I think the main thing is just a lot more confidence this time around.
Yeah, that's great. I think the knowing, what you would do differently this time, knowing that you've already gone through it, right? I think both of those are also really helpful in boosting your confidence that second time around. I know for me, working with people on the first book, getting them through it, suddenly it's like, oh, I could do this again, right? Like that first time is hard and a little overwhelming, but when you get to that finish line and hold your book, you're like, okay, I did it. I could maybe do this again, right?
Yeah,
Going into it with more confidence is, I think gives it more enjoyment and fun as well, right? You're not maybe overthinking quite as much as, you did the first time around, or at least, that's how I experience it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. So what benefits would you say that you have experienced by self-publishing?
Yeah. I would say outside of sort of what we were just talking about, like this confidence to know like, okay, I can do this. I would say the benefits are like the accessibility piece. I think I mentioned that earlier. It's just so much more accessible than I thought it would be. I truly feel like if you have a dream to write a book, like you can do it. Like I didn't have any sort of background knowledge on publishing, on the software, none of that. And I truly believe that like anybody could do it if that's a dream that they had. It's accessible, it's quick, relatively quick. Speaking in like publishing terms. It's just a good, quick way to get your story into the hands of other people. And I think it's a good so like if you have dreams of traditional publishing down the road, I think it's a good starting point too, to get experience, knowledge, and I know they're very different worlds in terms of publishing, but I think it's a good stepping stone in that direction too, for your first book or first couple books or whatever that looks like.
Yeah, that experience. And also I think it can actually support your strategy for like platform building and gaining that readership, right? In order to go on that journey of traditional publishing, right? So, actually publishing a book and selling a book, you need a platform, but having that book also helps you grow your platform, right? So being able to self-publish a book helps you be able to sort of, I think, gain some ground in that area. And like you said, because it's so accessible, it's a great way to open that door and just start kind of building your platform in a different way with maybe some more credibility sometimes. And yeah, I agree. I think, it's one of those things where you can self-publish now and traditionally publish later, or you can traditionally publish first and then decide to self-publish. I have, a client or two who've done that as well. But the flexibility and accessibility piece are definitely benefits for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you've shared a lot of good stuff already, Emily, but I'm wondering if there's anything else you would want to say to someone who's considering self-publishing.
Yeah. At the risk of sounding simplistic, because this obviously there's a lot of nuance in this, but I would say like just do it. And that's um it, sort of the advice that I got when I was starting out, is that like, you can sit on this idea and make a pros and cons list, or you know, ideate for so long.
Yeah.
But I would say with how accessible self-publishing is, and yeah, which with just how accessible it is, like just do it. Like
Mm.
you sit down and write it, especially when you're writing your first draft. Nothing has to be perfect. Like just like get the words onto paper and then take it one step at a time. I think that was when before I had even started the journey, I think the thought of like writing a book was this big looming idea, that I think that was like the first roadblock that I was like, I for sure can't do that. And then it was like publishing. I was like, I definitely can't do that because I can't even write the book in the first place. So I think like having this idea that like you can self-publish, like even if you like, I had a day job. I'm just a normal person with a day job, and I had this dream of writing a book. So if that's a dream of yours, you can self-publish. So that's the first step, is knowing that you can do this, and then it's saying, okay, I just got to sit down and write, and then the rest you take it one step at a time. So I would say just start.
Amazing. Great advice. Well, thank you, Emily, for joining me for this conversation.
Thank you.
And for those watching, I hope that you will leave a comment below, maybe sharing an insight that you gained from this conversation with Emily, or just say hello. That kind of support is great too. Be sure to read her bio, check out, the link to her book, and, wait for her upcoming fiction release as well. But other than that, thank you for joining us for this conversation, and we hope it was helpful on your self-publishing journey. Take care, everyone.